All right. Good morning and welcome to another morning episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. All right, folks, we're back at it. We are, I guess I could say, surprise. We have another bill review today, but unlike other days where I do it solo, which is my normal routine, today I have a guest. He is coming back on the show for not a second time, but a third time. So the first time, Joshua Krakow came on for Dad Talk to discuss what it's like being a dad and things that were important to him. Then I take it back. That wasn't the first time. That was the second time. The first time he ran for Florida State House District 77. And he is back now to talk about family court report cards. What is that? Well, it's a new bill here in Florida, and he's going to join us and tell us all about it. So please give a good, warm welcome to Joshua Krakow.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, sir?
Not too bad. Very optimistic for this legislative session, and hopefully we can get this bill passed.
All right. So first and foremost, let's let people know who you are and what you've been up to.
So my name is Joshua Krakow. I'm from Lee County, Florida. Never left this area. I'm 100% local. I ran for state house in 2024. I went through a very tumultuous family custody case fighting for my daughter, which then activated me into politics and trying to advocate for change in our family court system. As you had mentioned, I ran for state house, and I decided to step away this year, and I am now working with the 501c4, trying to make some legislative changes indirectly. And yeah, so we're working on that with the Family Alliance Movement. And it's basically a bill that is going to give the public a lot more transparency, um, which is what I really like about it. It gives us the ability to have some data points on how to assess whether we should retain or consider rejecting and finding new family court judges.
Okay.
So
Go ahead. So hold
yeah,
up for just
go
a second.
ahead.
Let's back up a wee bit. One of the things that I love to do when it comes to a bill review is I like to first identify the problem. So before
Yep.
we get into the details of the bill, kind of lay out for us, for people that are in Florida that may not know, and for people that are outside of Florida that wouldn't know, lay out what the problem is to be solved here.
So there's many problems I think that this bill will solve. When you're going and voting for a judge, because of the position, you really can't ask them any questions of morality, because they can argue that that it may be a question that they have to determine when in a case that is presented to them. And yeah, so it really is hard to vet a judge and decide whether or not a judge is a good judge. And in Florida, 40% of our court filings or around 40% are family law related. So it's a very, very, very burdensome and resource heavy aspect to our court system. So with that being said, that's one of the problems. The other problem is that we have no data points. There's no like, oh, well, one judge in one circuit can have cases that are 6 months. Some judges can have a year and a half. And it can spread differently from Lee County to Duval County or Hendry County or Miami-Dade County. So there's no real matrix. There's no Supreme Court of Florida family division. Family court is left basically to be mostly operated with very limited restraints by the local circuit court.
Gotcha.
So with that being said, with the data points, we're hoping that we can say, oh, well, this judge is taking forever. And really the goal in my opinion, for the family court system is to make sure that the child's safe and to make it as quick as possible to make sure that the child has access to both parents as long as it's safe.
So when there's delays, like a case is taking too long, what are some of the reasons that is it just a judge like, yeah, I'll get to it when I get to it, or are there other things that play a role? Like what is it that's causing the need for these metrics that would ultimately lead to hopefully choosing judges that are more on top of it, I guess?
So there's many different avenues of how it could take long. I mean, some judges we see overusing guardian ad litems,
Mhm.
which are basically representatives for the children, which can come into biases of I like this parent versus this parent. You also have psychological parenting evaluators that are basically trying to find the mental whatever of the parents, and they come into play. So unfortunately, we see a lot of the family court system wanting to delegate the responsibilities to third parties who also carry immunity from their decisions. So that them adding that bureaucratic bloat adds to the process. I think that almost as much as we want to detour people from going through the family court system
Mhm.
and work together, as I think that's the best for the child. The problem is that a lot of the times the family court system is able to delay the process and make the process so painful that you don't want to do it. So, hey, just settle outside of court. But in my instance, and a lot of the fathers that I've worked with my nonprofit Single Dads Outreach, what we see is that I mean, if you're an unmarried parent, you have no rights until the courts give you the rights. So in mediation, you're coming in with nothing at all. You're coming in empty-handed and, oh, well, what am I going to negotiate? Like,
Mhm.
it's a very poor negotiation. So you're forced to use the family court system. And because you're forced to use the family court system, it's a financial burden, it's emotional burden. The courts also, like I said, 40% of our court filings are around that are family law related. So I believe in my county, just in my county, not in my 20th circuit, we had over 100 DV filings last year, which are typically family law related as well.
Mhm.
So it's just a massive, I mean, there's bloat on it because of how many cases they have. So I'm not saying that it's 100% malice,
Mhm.
but there's confounding factors, and
Right.
there's no real incentive at this point for judges to accelerate the process and just try to get the kids back in the homes.
Gotcha. So ultimately, at the end of the day, what we're looking at is, hey, we have a system that keeps families separated or in legal limbo longer than they really need to be, or too long, however that's defined. Is that a good summary, you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that, I mean, I'm sure that there are certain cases in certain areas that are able to do it way faster than others.
Mhm.
And yeah, we have good judges and bad judges, and some judges are lazy. I've heard situations where family court judges, because they don't want to lose control of their court, they never actually file a final decision.
Hmm.
So they'll end up just, we'll supplement, we'll supplement, we'll supplement. So the case takes forever, and they'll have a year and a half before they even have a final decision. And you really don't have any, you're again in limbo. So
Mhm.
it comes into like this controlling factor for some judges. Yeah.
Gotcha. Now I'm looking at an article that looks like you wrote it. Well, let's see, maybe yesterday. I don't know. It says
Yeah, I got published yesterday.
okay, okay. That's funny because I was actually doing some research yesterday, and for some reason, I thought it was earlier. So it's interesting here. So it says transparency is not an attack on the judiciary. It is a safeguard for public confidence. Performance reporting highlights consistency, efficiency, and best practices while identifying patterns that may indicate delays, unnecessary cost, and or procedural bottlenecks issues families routinely experience but lack the data to explain. So when we're talking about like best practices, what are some of the best practices that maybe aren't in play right now that you think, hey, this should be an expectation for a family going through this particular process?
I mean, to be honest, I think that we should be able to get families united within 60 days, unless if there is a very tumultuous situation. Now, I understand that that may seem quite extreme, especially how we currently have our family court systems,
Mhm.
typically taking 6 months to a year and even longer. But I like to look at it like this: if there's no direct threat to the child, then it is harmful for the courts to not put the children in both homes in the lieu of a possible threat.
Gotcha.
So DCF, even in the state of Florida, says it's more harmful to remove the child from a dangerous home than to keep the child in that dangerous home and work with the parents
Gotcha.
on making it more safe. So I don't understand why our family court system is not able to operate under that same uh, idea.
Gotcha. Okay. And then it goes on and says the Family Court Report Card Act measures how those standards function in practice across the state. It gives lawmakers in Tallahassee reliable information to assess whether existing laws are working as intended and reassures the public that the government is willing to examine itself honestly. So when folks in Tallahassee, when they see the information, and we'll talk about what some of these things are that are listed in the bill, when they see this, like what kind of things might we expect Tallahassee to do should this bill pass? Like the bill passes, we get these metrics, Tallahassee looks at them. Now we have an expectation on people in Tallahassee. What's their next move when they look at it?
Well, I think that I hope that it actually is self resolving some of these issues. Like I said, The report card itself will be viewable for the public and the legislature and for the judges. So I look at like the aspect back in the day when you had grocery stores that had cashiers. They realized that having cashiers looking at each other's backs, they weren't as efficient. But once they had cashiers looking at each other and, oh, well, this cashier's having this line go faster and it's almost a competitive aspect, inadvertently, the consumer gets the best outcome. The process gets done faster. And yeah, I think that what we will see is that these judges will be hopefully worried about retention and will self-correct and say, man, I don't want to be the last to deal with my cases. And that's going to look bad on me when it comes to reelection, as well as, yeah. And then when it comes to the legislature, I mean, there's no data points. So everything that the legislature does has to be anecdotal. But if they have the data, they can say, hey, this is why we need to make this change. I mean, look at the disparities. I mean, we need to figure out some way to make it so that way individuals can come into court and know what to expect.
Gotcha. Before we get into the bill, I'm very curious. So you ran for State House, is that right? State House 77?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. State House District 77. You didn't get elected. However, you are working with the legislature. So kind of walk us through like, hey, I get done with my campaign. I am going through an experience. How did you end up now where you're advocating for a bill? And I presume, if I understand correctly, that you've even worked with the sponsor of the bill. So how did you get to that point? Because I'm very curious.
Yeah, so I ran my campaign, and my campaign was very heavy family court. As like I said, that's what got me into politics. I got into the nonprofit aspect and have just been very active in our local politics. And last year, or in 2026, when I was running, or 2024, I was running. I reached out to different organizations and different people, and just so happened that this year they had a bill, and they were looked at this 501c4 had this bill and was looking for somebody to help work on it and be able to articulate it best, so that way the legislature is more receptive of it. And I think that it's actually a great bill to be able to make change. I was a little apprehensive at first, just because coming from I'm very principled and very skeptical about getting on someone else's platform and representing myself on that. But I definitely think that was a great opportunity to make some change in the family court system. So I decided to work with them and take what I've learned and be able to carry on the message, and hopefully we can get this bill passed together.
Awesome. Yeah. And the reason I bring that up is because I know as libertarians, there's often like, the joke like, oh, you guys never accomplish anything. And, look at all the guys that run for office and don't win and blah, 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 all that good stuff. But here we have a case where, you went on to continue working and being a productive member of society, assisting other people, even yet in a different way. So it kind of, I would say, or you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like it opened the door for another opportunity.
Absolutely. So, yeah. Just don't give up, keep pushing and advocating for what you believe in. And eventually people will take notice. And that's really what I think happened.
So I think that's great. And I highly commend you, not only for running, but then, keeping the door open for an opportunity, particularly an opportunity that you feel passionate about. So I think that's wonderful. And I definitely wanted to highlight that for people. So let's get into this bill a little bit here. And it's like, look, folks, this bill, I'm looking over at my screen, and one day I'll fix the camera and all that. But the bill is only 4 pages. So right off the bat, I'm like, man, it's not so bad, because everybody knows that I don't like long bills. So here's what it says. The purpose of the pilot program is to refine data definitions, reporting standards, publication tools, and methods before the family court report cards are implemented statewide pursuant to this section. So this is a pilot program. It says no later than March 1st, 2027, the Office of the State Courts Administrator shall submit to the governor, the president of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives a report on the findings of the program. So this program is going to begin. The bill says it's going to begin on July 1st if it gets passed, and then it'll run through March 1st, 2027, or through some time period therein, and then they will deliver a report on what this pilot program will do. Can you describe the details of the pilot program versus what may come after it if it's successful?
I'm not exactly sure. I think that will probably come down to the legislature as far as how they truly implement it. I mean, you know how policies work. You have to give and take, and it typically doesn't exactly look exactly how you foresaw it. Even in the pilot program, I am hopeful that it will have key features like how long the case is lasting, whether there's guardian ad litem's involved. I mean, the more data that we collect, in my opinion, the better. But unfortunately, we probably will see certain aspects being removed just to be able to get the bill passed. But yeah, I think that we definitely need to see how much the cases are costing, how long they're taking, whether it's contentious, whether there's something like a parent guardian ad litem or a psychological parenting evaluator. Both of those I found, in my opinion, to be negative in most of the cases that I've worked. Because when you work with a lot of those individuals, especially the psychological parenting evaluators, psychology is the newest form of medicine or practice of medicine, and it typically takes a long time, many centuries to refine medicine. So with that being said, I believe that 90% of psychologists self-identify as Democrat and left-leaning, which you look at like the outcomes of the family court system, and I think that you would see a correlation between the family court cases that deal with these guardian ad litem's and major favoritism towards the mothers, because unfortunately everything is political, and the liberal ideology is that men are evil in a lot of senses, especially if they are masculine and are not submissive. So in my case, I had a psychological parenting evaluator, and this was in 2019. So you can only imagine how divisive politics were in that time. And I was a very, very, I'm always very passionate and express my opinions and unabashful about it. And with that being said, my psychological parenting evaluator projected that I was a Donald Trump supporter. And at the time, I was actually cheering for Joe Jorgensen. And I was just like completely thrown off as to how this evaluation jumped into me being a Trump supporter. And it was like, oh my God, it's downhill from here. So
well, would that even matter?
Exactly.
Right. I mean, if you were like, okay, I don't know what that has to do with family court per se.
Exactly.
That's wild.
It's presenting these personal inferences to the parents, and then they now have the bias, and that bias then plays out into the outcome of the children, which I think is very harmful.
Gotcha. So let's see. It looks like it has 7 requirements at a minimum here. And I'll stop at each one, and you can give any kind of additional commentary. Some of it may be kind of self-explanatory. So the average time to final judgment in dissolution and time-sharing cases. So any additional commentary for that particular requirement?
No, I think that's.
Gotcha. The percentage of cases resolved through mediation or settlement. Now, what's the value in knowing that information for me as a voter?
Well, we want to, in my opinion, it's best to keep the cases outside of the court system. And it's less hostile. I mean, when you get the government involved in any aspect, you're requiring force, because that
Mhm.
is what government is. So the least amount of force necessary and allowing people to work together, that's the best outcome no matter what. So
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah, I think that that's very important
Okay.
in trying to have
Um,
parents work together, and then that divisiveness then makes, or the force ends up being the pressure of that force ends up harming the child emotionally, and it makes it more divisive between the parents and fighting. And so if they can work together, that is optimal.
Gotcha. Okay. And I'm asking these questions out of sheer ignorance, folks,
Oh no, you're fine.
because I don't know. I haven't experienced these, not as a child, not as an adult, and I presume that many other people are in the same situation. So number three, the number and percentage of cases requiring court-ordered psychological evaluations. Now, this one's kind of interesting because, um, like if the number's higher or lower, what does that necessarily tell you? And again, we're thinking in terms of we have this information, we're trying to figure out should this judge be reelected? What would something like that tell a voter in any way?
So in my opinion, that can definitely tell the voter that the judge is delegating their responsibilities
Mhm.
to a third party rather than just having the evidence presented directly uh, to the um, to the judge. So I think that really we need to. I think that family court has been way too what is the word complex. We
Mhm.
made the family court system so complex that we want all these data points before we make a decision, even though the judge and all these psychologists are immune from their decisions. So it really is just harming the children, in my opinion, by adding more delays and more costs. These psychological parenting evaluators are not cheap. In a lot of cases, the courts also levy it much like child support, where one parent will pay a large portion and another parent will pay a smaller portion.
Mhm.
So it just becomes a more tumultuous situation. I think that the only way, or the only benefit to the psychological parenting evaluator, which is why I got mine involved in my case, was because of medical issues.
Mhm.
Um, my daughter's mother suffered from mental health problems, and because I'm not a medical professional and the judge isn't a medical professional, I wasn't even able to use my daughter's mother's Baker action and temporary removal as evidence, because we're not medical professionals. So we can't even say, oh, well, she was Baker acted. So
Gotcha.
it's there very much of this gatekeeping aspect too, of preventing mental health being presented as a concern for a child's well-being
Gotcha. So in your
without
case,
these evaluators.
it could have been an underused situation. Um, I assume that it can also be overused. What are some of the situations where maybe a court might be ordering a psychological evaluation unnecessarily?
So I mean, like I said, it happens all the time. I forget the term, but if one parent brings it up and you don't vehemently disagree, then you ultimately are agreeing
Mm,
in the court system. So, and unfortunately, I think that a lot of lawyers have learned these different tactics to delay the process,
mhm.
to gain child support, and also to make it more damning, so that way they can make more money. So, I think that a lot of our family court system problems are ran by our lawyer guilds and
Gotcha.
lobbyists in the lawyer sectors.
Gotcha. Moving on, number four, the average cost to parties for court appointed professionals, if such data is available. Is there a large cost involved to people based on the decision that a judge or a court makes, or is it fairly standard? Like, is there a
Oh,
variation, I guess?
I mean, I've heard of cases costing $20,000. My case cost me over $100,000.
Hmm.
I had to pay for both sides of my attorney fees. So I had to pay my attorney and my daughter's mother's attorney. So I mean, there's just no. I think that our family court system has also been made into a wealth distribution program. And that aspect alone is very, very harmful to our children with the Title 4D aspect. But that's a different subject than the report card.
Gotcha. Okay. Number 5, the rate of post judgment modifications within 3 years after entry of final judgment. I'm not even sure what that is, honestly.
So basically, what we see is that the judges will make final decisions, and those final decisions will not be final. They'll have new evidence that has to be brought up,
Mm.
emergency injunctions, and then, oh crap, we need to readdress it because clearly the first decision wasn't good enough. So, like I said, we have situations where judges will just open-ended their case, so they never have a final judgment, so they don't have that number of readjudications. And then we'll have ones that will just close it, and because they closed it so quickly without any data points, they have emergency injunctions, and now they're having to reopen the case because
Okay. So it sounds to me, if I understand this correctly, then that they're going to track and say, okay, how many post judgment modifications were made within 3 years, and then we can look at that information, and then we can say, okay, these number of cases perhaps were not thoroughly completed at that time, or is it the case where maybe one side, a mother or a father, is continually looking to gain a vantage point, and they kind of leverage the system. Is that what's going on, or is it just I don't know if I want to use the word sloppy, but perhaps maybe incomplete, an incomplete case to begin with? Like what's going on here that would even lead to a post judgment modification?
I mean, a lot of the times, people are just not happy with the outcome.
Mm.
So they feel like they didn't get justice. The process took so long. And then circumstance changes. Hey, I was only given weekends. I want to have 50-50, and
Mhm.
they're working their way through that. The financial aspect comes in, and oh, well, I lost my job. I need a modification to, yeah. So there's so many different factors. And with the system being so cumbersome, it makes that process very unstable, I guess you could say.
Okay.
And we want to be able to make that process very transparent, so you can actually mainstream it. There's also a bill, I don't remember the bill number, that's on the ballot again, or on the ballot this year as well, where we hopefully will get family court judges for emergency injunctions on the weekends,
Mm.
because right now it's Monday through Friday, and it's very limited. And if you have one parent removing a child and not following the judge's final order, that's also another problem. We have this problem in the family court system where the judge makes a final decision, because they don't explicitly write that law enforcement is to enforce the final order. The law enforcement agencies refuse to enforce the final order because it's a civil matter. So you need to
Okay.
go to your judge, and oh, well, you have a civil matter, go deal with the judge. We're not dealing with your civil matter. Even though it is part of their duties, they delegate it back to the judges, and the
Mhm.
judges, like I said, are so bloated. So there's no real enforcement aspect to a lot of the problems that are in the family court system. And you do see a lot of situations where parents just don't follow the final order, and it depends on whether it becomes a slap on the wrist or completely ignored. And it's like, come on, like there's just never really a sense of justice in a lot of the tumultuous family court cases.
Gotcha. And it kind of sounds like this one, having some data points on post judgment modifications would require, okay, a little bit of detail, like maybe why, because like I could understand where if a couple agrees upon, hey, you have the kids on the weekend, I have the kids through the week, and then as they go along, they realize this isn't working. We would like to change this to maybe 50-50, or one of them more than likely would like to say, hey, I would like to actually increase it to 50-50, or hey, I did lose my job. I need to, make an adjustment. So it seems like there are some legitimate, if you will, reasons for an adjustment. But this
Mhm.
would help us to maybe identify and separate, okay, this one was, a result of, maybe the court wasn't thorough in the first place, or perhaps, you have one party who is engaging in, just playing games basically and kind of trying to manipulate the situation even further. And then you have over here, hey, here are some legitimate things that, people didn't realize, until they experienced it.
Yeah, and that's why we have the factor of how tumultuous the cases are.
Mhm,
Because I mean, if you don't have like DCF, DJJ, all these
mhm,
other things, those definitely explain a lot. There's space for judges to write notes in the report. I believe that you'll get into it, but there's also questionnaires just simple for the parents
mhm,
to then review how they feel like the court comes in. And I think that that's also important as well. So in 2001, we had the Supreme Court of Florida rule that we should have what's called a family law advisory group.
mhm,
And we've never seen that implemented. Even though it was done, I believe that we sent out like one point or $1.25 million for 5 different circuit courts to
mhm,
do a pilot program. And Lee County, my county, was one of them that received $250,000 and failed to implement it. And the reason was basically the structure for this family law advisory group was supposed to be kind of like a school board meeting
mhm,
where you, me, your pastor, your kid's coach, your whoever wants to can come and talk to the courts. The courts could then look and understand the ramifications of their decision. It would also allow pro se litigants to be able to understand the process a lot more.
mhm.
And unfortunately, we haven't seen our courts do anything of that. So I think that, again, this bill hopefully will give us more transparency, and hopefully we can see certain things like this push for prior laws to be enforced and just fix our family court system in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So then you've got number 6 here, the compliance rate with statutory time requirements for rulings on motions and reports. I think this is kind of self-evident. Like, how long did it take you to did you meet the requirements? Were you in compliance with these? So I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Then the last one, the aggregate rate of reversal on appeal in family law. Does reversal happen a lot?
I'm honestly not sure.
Okay.
I mean, from my understanding, I've heard that appeals really isn't very beneficial in most cases
Hmm.
because you're dealing with a judge in the same circuit or in the same court. I would much rather see some kind of overseen body from the state
Hmm.
that would be able to not per se do the appeals, but do
Hmm.
an auditing of these cases. Because when you're dealing with the same people regularly, you're
Hmm.
typically not going to be abrasive and and try to make that workplace hostile. So you're more or less likely, in my opinion, to side with that ruling judge and decide against the public or the citizen that's trying to get that justice. I don't think government typically works for us. I think that it works for itself and its own ease. Unfortunately, it's not as much of a sense of duty as I think a lot of people wish that these elected politicians and unelected bureaucrats operate under.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is all very interesting. Now, what I really like about this, it's got 4 additional points here, and I'll just read them through. We don't necessarily have to talk about them unless you have something, to add. But it says to ensure accurate interpretation of the metrics under this subsection, each report card must also include all of the following: circuit caseload volume and yearly changes, available judicial and administrative resources for family court operations, indicators of case complexity when quantifiable, and then an optional narrative statement not to exceed 500 words by a presiding judge to provide context for the metrics. So I think that's very interesting because it sounds to me like somebody thoroughly went through this bill and said, all right, number one, we need to have some metrics so that we can look at them and we can determine, basically, is this judge delivering good results in a timely manner? But then they went on further and said, let's make sure that these report cards aren't just a bunch of data that can be interpreted any old which way. So I can appreciate that, because at the end of the day, as a voter, and I'm sure many voters out there have experienced this, you go to the poll and you're looking at judges and you're like, I don't know. Yeah, I have no clue. Nothing to judge. Like, and what I've done in the past is I'll look up judges sometimes, and if I see they have a controversy, then I will sometimes, probably more than sometimes, um, I will sometimes vote for their opponent, just because I'm like, I don't know, do I want you having a controversy? I mean, I'll read about the controversy, make sure it's something negative. But even that's not really, because you never know what the media may say about anybody. So let's see. Lastly, I think this is a good point to make from the bill. Report cards may not contain personal identifying information about litigants or minor children. So if
Yep.
anybody out there is worried about, hey, is my case going to be blasted all over, some website? The answer is no, because it does state in here that the state courts administrators shall maintain a publicly accessible, searchable online database of report cards and annual statewide summaries. So I think that's good. So this is something for the public. So we would be able to go to a website, look up, Judge Joe Brown, and then say, all right, he's running for election again. How good is he, or how bad is he? And, in my estimation, which I think will give us, you know, better information than we had, before we looked it up. So I think that's
Yeah.
great. The person that's sponsoring this bill, Fabian Basabi, is that how you say his name?
I'm not positive, to be honest with
Okay.
you.
Now, have you worked directly with him, or just who are you specifically working with on this bill, or did people just reach out to you and say, "Hey, please promote this bill," or like kind of
Yeah.
dive into that?
So I was reached out to by the Family Alliance movement, and this is a
Okay.
bill that is passionate of theirs, and it just lined up with my objectives, and I felt like it was something very important. So I wanted to get involved when the
Mhm.
opportunity arose.
Gotcha. Well, for right now, folks, the bill is in the Civil Justice and Claims Subcommittee, and I don't want to hold you up any longer, sir. I'm sure that you have things that you need to go and do today. So, two things: tell us how people can support you and how people can support this bill.
Well, first and foremost, we need to get this bill passed, in my opinion, to see the change that we need in our family court system. So the change will be helped by being able to reach out to your state Senate and state legislature and just talk about it and say, hey, I really think that there is a problem with the family court system. And I think that this will be great data points for you guys to possibly make resolutions,
Mhm.
as well as I appreciate the transparency. It I think really helps with the public being able to trust government.
Mhm.
It's transparency is very, very, very important, in my opinion, for the public and government relationships.
Mhm.
And there isn't very much trust in government these days, and I think it's very incumbent for us to start bringing that trust back if the government is going to start working for us. And then, as far as me, I am on Facebook. You can follow me on Facebook, and then I also have a politics YouTube channel called Grassroots Garage
Mhm.
podcast, and that's where we discuss mostly local politics and try to stay away from the federal stuff, mostly state and local,
Mhm.
um, and get into like topics of property rights and intellectual property and just different things like you do. And that's Grassroots Garage podcast on YouTube
Gotcha.
and
And I
Rumble.
apologize, folks, for not having the links to throw up on the screen here, but I will make sure to add them to the show notes after the show. Joshua, please make sure once we get done here to just throw me the links real quick, to help support you. That way I can add them to the show notes. Any final words, sir, before I let you go?
No, I think we hit a lot of the good points, and I definitely appreciate your time and your listeners' time, and hopefully we can make this change so that way we can make Florida much better, and hopefully if we get this bill passed, other states will follow suit, and we can make a major national change. So
Awesome.
that's the hope. So
Awesome.
thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. And I appreciate all your hard work. Keep up with doing all the good work, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one. All right, folks. There you have it. That's the show for today. Hope you enjoyed it. You know, I forgot to hit my little pass bell. Let's do it. Do I get it there? It didn't come up on this. Okay. I got to work on some audio things, but just imagine that there was a little bell that said ding that says, I support this bill. You know that I don't support very many bills. Generally speaking, I oppose them for a myriad of reasons. But this one, I love transparency. And I've always found the idea of voting for a judge to be extremely difficult. You go out, like I said earlier, you look up the name and you're like, okay, but should I vote for this person or should I vote for their opponent? I don't know. And then maybe you go and you see who they're endorsed by. And that's not really a good way to identify people that are in power, that are elected to do a job. So support this bill. If you're in Florida, reach out to your state house and your Senate representative. Let them know that you support this bill. One more time, just so you know what bill you'll be talking about. This is HB 1391 family court report cards. And if you're looking for who it is that you want to reach out to, you can reach out to what was his name? Fabian, and I think it's Basabi, but I could have that wrong. So I apologize in advance if I have mispronounced his name. Otherwise, folks, that's my show. Look forward to seeing you in the next episode. But for now, I'm out. Have a good one. You know that I'm all about supporting organizations that hold my values. Make sure you head on over to blackgunsmatter.shop. They've got apparel, stickers, and more. Use the code LibertyDad, all one word, at checkout to score a 10% discount. Or just hit the referral link in the show notes. That'll make it so much easier. Remember, I'm not just a voice on a mic. I'm a dad who's working hard to deliver to you the best libertarian content. Connect with me on Linktree, where you'll find links to my Patreon and buy me a coffee, because, you know, every bit helps keep this show rolling. Plus, you can find me on my other platforms to stay in the loop. With your help, this show, The Message of Liberty, will be seen and heard by more people. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing you in the next episode.